Although the curricular focus was not clear during those years, the religious emphasis was. The initial separation of religion and education had long since passed. Religion was now a respected and central part of the curriculum. It was clear also that not just any religion would do. When Bible professor Amos H. Haynes slipped into Unitarianism in 1916, he was dismissed, despite his 19 years of service. M.G. Brumbaugh in 1924 let it be known what kind of place Juniata was. First of all, it is a Christian college dedicated to the advancement of right living here and teaching that there is a hereafter of tremendous significance. This college teaches the supremacy of God, the deity of Jesus, and the power and presence of the Holy Spirit. The normal school for Brethren youth was now a Christian college. M.G. returned in that year, 1924, to take up a second stint as president. In 1915, he had been elected governor of Pennsylvania. Now past 60, and the college's most illustrious son, he was called back, and he accepted. He found a lively campus. Flappers and ragtime, shorter skirts, and looser morals were in America, and while none of these was welcomed at Juniata, they had their undeniable effect on student life. The trustees worried about the behavior of students. They had pressured President I. Harvey to tighten discipline. He was a mild man who hadn't the heart for it, and partly for that reason had resigned in 1924. More than that, students were clamoring for power. They wanted student government. The trustees were afraid that if students got that power, things might disintegrate completely. Well, they eventually got it, and things didn't, although even the urbane M.G. wasn't so sure student government was a good thing. It was, however, here to stay, and the trustees made the best of it. Those days saw the first leadership conference, the beginnings of the drama club, the first move-up day, the founding of the J Club, and the first issue of the Juniatian. Students put a gossip column in the Juniatian, began to haze freshmen, and created a student handbook so the frosh would understand the hazing. They started going to Skip's Inn. By careful poll, the favorite pinup among the males at Skip's was Greta Garbo. The trustees and administration tried to keep a tight rein on these high spirits. M.G. wrote to a parent in 1928, "Your daughter throwing her arms around this boy in the public hall was resented by every right-thinking student." It is uncertain whether right thinking had a majority in the student body, but it was a powerful force on the board. Ironic that the unruly 20s should find the college so decidedly Christian, and fitting that the worldly dunker M.G. should preside over those times. He was a large and eloquent man, persuasive and attractive. He had one habit that Juniata patiently tolerated. In his years in politics, he had grown fond of cigars, and at 60 he was too old to give them up. Yet Juniata in 1924 regarded smoking as grounds for expulsion. M.G. reached a quiet settlement with the college. He would smoke in his apartment, and people would try to forget that they smelled cigar smoke wherever he went. When he died in 1930, he ended a decade and a dynasty. However, another dynasty was in the making. Dr. C.C. Ellis was elected the new president. He was a more austere man than M.G., a fundamentalist who took his religion straight. He possessed a spellbinding voice, stern morals, 2 PhDs, and of all things an Irish sense of humor. No one could ever recall hearing him say a bad word about anyone. Now that the school had straightened out its program, the faculty set out to make that program excellent. In 1937, 3 young professors, Drs. Calvert N. Ellis, Harold Binkley, and Homer Will, presented a new curriculum to the faculty. It placed the courses in 3 divisions and introduced general education. Even Harvard did not get around to general education until some 8 years later. In 1940, Juniata was accredited by the Association of American Universities, and in 1942, the American Chemical Society recognized the school, and indirectly the work of still another Brumbaugh, Dr. N.J., who had built Juniata's famous chemistry department. Dr. C.C. Ellis continued that tradition of strong leadership set by the Brumbaughs. During his administration, a tradition of academic excellence began, too. retired in 1943, the choice fell on his son, Dr. Calvert Ellis. He was promising, but he was young. Some trustees had their doubts as to whether he could handle the job. They took their chances, though, and were rewarded by a distinguished presidency. That 1937 curriculum which Dr. Calvert had helped create marked a subtle change in the Christian college. In his inaugural speech in 1943, the new president said, "The role of the small denominationally related college is to provide a basic education in the arts and sciences in an atmosphere friendly to the Christian faith." Christianity now shared the stage with the secular understandings of the arts and sciences. The Christian college of the 20s had become a liberal arts college friendly to the Christian faith. Students had been quiet through the elder Ellis's tenure and into President Calvert's first years. Then the World War II veterans returned, nearly swamping the campus. The student body doubled in 2 years, and the moral climate changed again. These men were older and more experienced. The transition from barracks to dormitory was a major one, and in the end it was Juniata that changed. Then another period of quiet prevailed, through the Eisenhower years and up into the early 60s. Students were sometimes called apathetic, for they accepted the school as they found it. But they were not dull. Some of those students are today's faculty members. In 1955, the football team went to the Tangerine Bowl. The early teams, except for the 29 squad, were sadly undistinguished. It was not, as a matter of fact, until the late 40s that Juniata began to play winning football. Since then, it has fielded many good teams. The mid-60s saw another change. A suddenly awakened group of students and faculty went to Alabama to join the civil rights protests. In the years following, students began to speak angrily against the Vietnam War. President Calvert Ellis's administration embraced the World War II veterans and the Vietnam War protesters. In those 25 years, the buildings on campus doubled, the student body quadrupled, and academic excellence was established beyond all doubt. When he retired, Dr. Ellis had held the full presidency longer than any other man. Improving the faculty was one of his most important achievements. The early faculty members were very dedicated. Sometimes they held dual roles, serving as trustees as well as professors. However, they were not always well trained. Today's faculty are, but they have in common with their less schooled colleagues of the early days a lively concern for students. MG said, "We purpose to maintain close personal touch with our student body. We want to know these young men and women. We want to enter into their life purposes and help develop those qualities of mind and soul that will be received with favor." When asked what was the most significant thing in his college years, an alumnus said, "The relationship I had with a professor who took a large interest in me." The early brethren were family people who looked after those around them and left behind a tradition of concern that has lived on in the faculty and is remembered by the alumni. Last year, a remarkable 49% of the alumni contributed money to the college. For years, they have been sending not only money, but their children and grandchildren. While concern may be the faculty's greatest gift to the student, teaching is their proper business with him, and they do it well. The earliest faculty wanted to train the student for the world he would enter. Today's professors still do that, but they persuade him to think about it too. Thinking is the mark of a liberally educated person. The students of the late 60s did a lot of thinking and more acting than some of their elders cared to have. Dr. Ellis retired in 1968, and his successor, Dr. John N. Stauffer, reaped the full measure of student activism, which peaked in 1970 when the Kent State tragedy enraged students. Juniata closed for several days. For the little school that had once prided itself on being right and tight, those were disturbing times. But President Stauffer held Juniata together. During his administration, campus rules were adapted to the changes in student lifestyle, while avoiding the worst excesses of youthful behavior or alumni dismay. The endowment doubled, salaries of faculty increased significantly, the environmental field station on Raystown became an exciting addition to the campus, and the football team went to the Stag Bowl. The school became in those years more independent of the influence of the church. Today it is a freestanding liberal arts college, though it still values its religious heritage. During those iconoclastic 60s, students cared very little about traditions. One that remained popular was Mountain Day. Back in 1926, a student wrote, "God carved the land surrounding Huntington when he was very happy, and filled it with all things beautiful and gave it to us for Juniata." Someone wisely in the early years decided to celebrate Juniata's beautiful surroundings, and every fall since, when the mountains are at their loveliest, the college takes a day off to tramp through them. There have been other traditions special to Juniata: Move-Up Day, the Raft Regatta, Founders Day, Dinks and Dark Night Tribunals, Round Top holding secrets better left untold, and the cherished All-Class Night, when classes compete to demonstrate the best in original drama, and sometimes achieve instead the choicest in creative mischief. The college has enjoyed 100 years of good favor. It has been blessed with strong leaders, human fellowship, and academic excellence. Juniata has enjoyed the fruits of a rich heritage. It has had traditions to cherish, students to do interesting things, and alumni to remember those things fondly. Its difficulties have strengthened it. Its disasters have not overwhelmed it, and its achievements have graced it. The normal school that began in the imagination of 3 Brumbaughs has become more than anyone expected. President Calvert Ellis often said something like that about Juniata's students. The distinctive thing about Juniata, he would say, is that it takes ordinary students and makes of them extraordinary persons. It is not unusual for the students at this college to grow beyond what they expected to be. It is not surprising, then, that this college has become more than the founders expected it to be. When Founders Hall was dedicated in 1879, Jacob Zook said, "In view of our small beginning and past history, it would be less than human for us not to boast ourselves a little on an occasion like this." That was an auspicious moment, a season of good favor. This is another. Juniata is 100 years old. And in view of that beginning and this rich history, it would be less than human for us not to boast ourselves a little again. It has been a good century, and in the next, Juniata promises to be more than we might expect it to be.